We got a lot of things to talk about. What do you want to
Yeah,
delve into your album first before we go political
I
religious
don't.
or see what comes out of
Well,
the album discussion?
I don't know really what to say about the album more than because I can't be objective about it. I'm too close to it, but it does kind of stem from all of this
Yeah.
conversation. I mean, it's kind of weird that the first song on the record, the first lyrics out of my mouth are "What's it like to say goodbye to yourself when it's
Yeah.
over, when it's near the end?"
Well, I
So,
was going to
so to
say this
start
is a
it,
very introspective album. I listened to the whole thing twice, Joe,
well, thank
and
you.
it was very introspective. I wanted to ask you, obviously, you've transitioned from being a Christian from Undercover, where there's very overt lyrics. In this album, you are definitely trying to communicate some themes and thoughts. What would you sum it up as?
Oh boy, I really so I was a key one of the keynote speakers at the Freedom from Religion Foundation's annual
Mhm.
convention a few years back, and I have a relationship. I haven't been in touch with him lately, but Dan Barker, who's the president of that organization, and I have been, I would say maybe friends, somewhat, not super
Mhm.
close, but he was a Christian musician himself before he dismissed his faith. And in the process of, I have a song on one of their compilation albums, and he came back to me. We had this discussion about, well, you really ought to put it out there, your
Yeah.
unbelief. And I came back and said, Dan, I did music as propaganda for years, and I
Yeah.
just don't want to do that anymore. And so this record is really, I don't have an axe to grind with religion at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. And that comes through.
With
That does come through that I didn't feel like there's no barbs in this album.
No, well, there's the one verse in that song called "The Altars" where I say something like, "It's the priests who kill the prophets, the
Yeah.
oracles of God. They
Yeah.
have nothing more to offer. The crooked staff and rod, Pharisees of shame. I was foolish just the same." So some people may look at that and say, "Oh well, poking religion in the eye, are you?" And it's really not, because what that song is about is my experience in three different scenarios: my parenting, my life as a believer, and my life as a lover, as a partner, as a
Hmm.
spouse, and how each one of those has pierced me asunder, to the depths of my soul, so to speak. And but it's not about anything or anyone in particular. As you said, introspective. The record's about me and my experience, and my hope is that some folks might see themselves in it or see their circumstance and maybe
Yeah.
get something out of it.
Yeah. By the way, The Altars was my favorite song. That was,
Really
yeah, not just lyrically, but I loved just the melodies and the music. I particularly liked that one. Just FYI.
interesting, because that one barely made the cut. I was so
Really?
iffy. I was so iffy on, God, should I do this one or not?
Oh, that's funny.
It, yeah, but I never know. I had good input from friends saying, yes, put it on there. And I think
Yeah.
really Aaron Smith shines on that one. I
Okay,
think that's his
yeah.
best performance.
We were talking earlier about the movie review show I do with my friend James. We are perplexed by what shoots up. Like we think, oh, this is going to be one that really takes off, and it just dies on the runway. And then one that
Right.
we thought, oh, let's just do it for shits and giggles. Then that ends up getting, 10,000 views or something. It's just insane. We keep joking. You never can judge where something is going to go.
Doubly true for artists and their own records.
Yeah.
I'm notoriously bad at picking the single, the radio
Yeah.
single.
Yeah. Well, how has your songwriting, your approach to songwriting changed since Undercover? You wrote a lot of the songs, I believe, for Undercover. Is that correct?
Yeah, like on Brandon, I wrote all of them but one.
Hmm.
But the way I think of it in my head is that Jim and I are kind of co-writers for all the songs.
Hmm.
The last record that we did for Undercover, I had not yet even started my music education. And so that was a thing where I now have a master's in music with,
Hmm.
my concentration is in composition and theory.
Hmm.
So there's those musical elements that I think are brought to bear on this record. And I always wanted to like increase my skill set without losing accessibility? Like, can the song still be listenable and yet musically sophisticated without going off the
Hmm.
deep end into prog rock or
Yeah.
any of that stuff? So that was my musical objective, was to just make the songs musically more powerful and yet even more accessible.
Hmm.
So there's that, and then of course there's the fact that I'm no longer a believer, and that
Hmm.
that's definitely going to change the songwriting Undercover, and that's been both a difficult and beautiful thing because we're clearly the four of us. It's been the same four guys for
Yeah.
41 years now, and we're all in different places politically. We're in different places religiously, and some of the conversations are tough, and
Yeah.
yet we all acknowledge that we've had something special together, artistically
Yeah.
and in people's lives. So, but in my own thinking, I have to think I'm not interested in doing Undercover anymore as nostalgia. So I don't want to
Hmm.
do any more reunion shows or
Yeah.
festival and play all the greatest hits.
Yeah.
This record, this new one, Behold, is definitely kind of where I'm at right now musically.
I think it helped knowing. Funny thing is, I one of the reasons I listened to it all through again a second time was I found the lyrics. You'd sent the promotional materials, but I somehow didn't scroll through because I kept thinking, I'm
Mm.
surely there must be lyrics in here, and then I went looking for them and found them, and so that's when I re-listened to it with the lyrics. But knowing a little of your background through our conversations, I could read you into the songs. And how do you, I mean, you probably have already experienced this, and I know you have on Facebook the reaction from your former Undercover fans. Have many of them made the journey with you here? How do you think this album is going to be received?
I just have no idea about that last part.
Okay.
I'm too close to it. I mean, the people that have heard it so far, the response has been really great. I think that I was down in Cottage Grove, Oregon, mixing it with Chris Colbert, and he said, "Well," and Dan Michaels said the same thing from the choir. He said, "People may or may not like the record, but if they don't, it will be because it'll be a stylistic choice, not because the record's not well done or well written
Right.
or well
Yeah.
recorded or produced." So we're all very proud of the work we did on it. As far as the have people followed me, there's folks like your brother who
Yeah.
have naturally evolved in their belief system. I don't think that I'm the cause of anything. I have a
Mhm.
platform for whatever it's worth with my students and with the Undercover constituents, and I speak my mind. I try to do it respectfully. But even when you let's say criticize an idea, and I use the word criticize in the most generous way, critique, let's say, or if you critique an idea that someone holds dear, they can often take that personally as a
Yeah.
personal criticism. But I try to do it respectfully when I do talk about it. But honestly, Steve, the farther we go, I don't know, the farther I go in my life and my age and my years, and then the farther we go in this Trump administration
Yeah.
and the connection between ethics and morals and a supposed belief system that to me doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Um, I am less inclined to even want to discuss it with anyone. It's just
Yeah.
hardly even an interesting conversation anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I
I value these conversations with you because you're able to have them at an intelligent level that collegiality, I guess, is another
yeah.
word that,
I know I hear you and I
that
appreciate it. And I was thinking about this listening to the album, Joe, in that one of my critiques of a lot of, among other things, is Christian worship music, the whole industry of worship. And the funny thing is, and I hope you hear this as a with the positive intention. I mean it. I almost felt like your new album is almost like a worship album. Like it, but it is the kind of worship album that I would respond to in that it asks questions. It's like May It Be So. That was another one that I really enjoyed. It touches me, and it's not just saying, oh Jesus, you're the, God, you're the best God in the whole world. There's no other God like you. That stuff just bores me. But when there's this deep introspection about what it means to be human and how that our humanity interacts in the earth and in trying to touch the divine in some way, whatever you see the divine as. What I came away from this album is like I would get in if more Christian music was like this, I would respond better to Christian music.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not saying yeah, make a it's almost like you said earlier. I think this is what got me going down this train of thought. You said like I'm no longer a believer, okay, and I don't have to do the propaganda, which I totally get. But I almost feel, I've said this before when I've had these discussions, even around here in Hong Kong. I'll say, oh, my brother, or I said, I've got this friend that was part of a Christian punk band. And I said, I almost feel that they have become more Christ-like or more Christian since they've left Christianity. And in a way, I feel that way. Like, I feel like this is more of a album that touches me spiritually than a lot of the Christian albums, if that makes sense.
yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, there is that. I mean, you just kind of nailed a whole bunch of different great ideas there. One of them is that when I was playing for the Sufis in Charlottesville, Virginia, it's kind of where a lot of the tuning that I used and the guitar licks came from that experience because it's very modal and Middle Eastern sounding, a lot of drones and that kind of thing. But anyway, I was playing for one of their events, and this couple walked up to me and were talking, and they just assumed that I was part of that faith system, the
Hmm.
American Sufis. And I said, no, I'm not really. And they said, oh, well, what are you then? I said, well, I'm an atheist. And the woman looks at me completely straight faced and she says, you have no inner life? And that just like my jaw.
Yeah, yeah,
We are spiritual beings as
yeah,
human beings, and what does that mean? So I mean, for me, that song that you just mentioned, "May It Be So," is a prayer.
yeah,
It
yeah.
absolutely is a prayer on the surface, and
Hmm.
but prayer is not necessary. It's not a uniquely Christian thing. All religions
No.
have prayer, even the Buddhists. And for Buddhists, that it's more of a spoken intention, a meditative practice to pray, to
Hmm.
bring something into the forefront of our consciousness. But I also there's other theological terms in there. One line says, "May your hopes withstand the flood against the rivers of our sins."
Hmm.
And there are some folks that say, well, why are you using a religious term if you're not a believer? And of course, the answer is because those religious terms are not religious terms. They're human terms that somebody else has made religious
That's
based
it.
on their own theology. So the idea that I'm atheist means that I'm not spiritual, I think, is completely false, and
Hmm.
it's a myth. And I think that really the atheism is about you're right. I do feel like I'm just as spiritual as I was before. It's just that I cannot make myself adapt to or adopt or believe in certain theological objective claims. And this was, I think, the conversation on Facebook that led to
Yeah.
this meeting.
Oh, yes.
How
Yeah.
do you reconcile things
Yeah.
like what I now consider to be fundamentally unethical? The
Hmm.
fact that there's a God that needs to be worshipped or wants to be worshipped, or this idea of original sin, or that the human race is by nature fallen, or that
Yeah.
we needed a human blood sacrifice to atone to this God, and what will happen if we don't avail ourselves of this, and what's the mechanism? Is it faith or belief? And you're going to get different answers to all those questions across the whole faith spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's kind of where I'm at now. So some people have totally ditched the theology piece, but they're still just as spiritual, and they see that, as I do, as a growth, as an evolution, as so there's the ethical piece too, the Sermon on the Mount, for example, or the Beatitudes. Those are less theological teachings than they are ethical teaching in
Yeah.
my mind. the one somebody pointed this out to me. And I think this is pretty profound that the Beatitudes say nothing about what to believe. It's only how to act.
Yeah.
The Nicene Creed says nothing about how to act. It's all about what to believe.
Yeah.
And so, how do we, connect all that into a, I'm curious. I want to ask you the question: how do you reconcile all that as someone who
Yeah.
still identifies as Christian?
Yeah. Yeah. No, N.T. Wright wrote a book about 10 years ago on this, where he talked about, he said how Jesus became king. And he mentions that. He goes, somehow we go in the Nicene King, or the Nicene Creed from, I believe in the virgin birth all the way up to suffered under Pontius Pilate. But there's all this space in between where Jesus was talking about, hey, these things that I'm teaching you, you've got to put into practice. In fact, people will know you're one of my followers if you're putting these things into practice, demonstrating love. And, if you got two cloaks, somebody needs one, give one. If somebody's hungry, give them food. It's just the kind of the things that we take is they should go without saying. I think in that culture, it needed saying, and I it comes back to something we were talking about earlier about worship. I'm getting ready to write a Substack piece on why why we prefer worshiping Jesus, because it can cover for the fact we're not obeying him. Like if I can just soak in his presence, if I can just lift up holy hands and worship him, if I can go to one of those Sean, is it Feck, Freck, I forget the worship leaders doing all the MAGA worship stuff. If I can convince myself I'm worshiping God and that we're having this relationship, we can ignore, that can cover over the fact that I'm not obeying him, that I'm not welcoming the stranger, that I'm really deriding immigrants, that I'm, slurring people that I should be loving. That's been one of my biggest concerns. Like on Facebook, when I see people that I went to church with, and they will show the most horrific images of, not horrific, that's an exaggeration, but like they'll show Biden, they'll show Kamala Harris, they'll show Obama in the most ridiculous situations with the most ridiculous meme. And I'm thinking, how do you how do you justify that as a Christian? How do you, when I've had these conversations with a couple of them, they'll say, well, Steve, you posted stuff about Trump. I said, you'll never see me posting about Trump about his hair looking ridiculous or him not
Mm-hmm.
going down a ramp like an old man. I said, I'm never
Mm-hmm.
making fun of him per se. I'm always trying to highlight bad policy and highlight the fact that you as Christians should not be following somebody who exudes these characteristics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. I had a conversation here at my house with an old friend of mine who's also never was a believer. He's still not a believer,
Mm,
but we were trying to dissect this because a lot of his family are believers, and just like a lot
mm,
of us, there's a lot of friction, I guess,
mm.
or let's just call it sandpaper between
Yeah,
family members over the political environment, and that's fine. I have it with my kids also. They're all across the spectrum, but they're my kids, and that comes first, of course.
sure.
But I always, even from the stage, used to quote a quote that was attributed to Saint Francis of Assisi, whether he actually said it or not. But it was preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words.
Yeah.
And that has really always spoken loudly to me. And as I was talking this over with my friend, this idea of ethics is really super important to me, and I do a lot of reading on ethics
Hmm.
and ethicists. We can agree across faith systems on what ethical behavior is, and we might disagree at the margin on certain things, but for the most part, should people have health care? Should
Yeah,
people be fed? Should we have education? Should we all those kinds of things. How what's best for the human race? We can debate at the margins, but what really I find perplexing is when people take those ethics that we all can believe in, that we should all be able to assent to and agree on, and make it a religious point, not an ethical point.
yeah.
Does that make any sense, Steve? Oh well,
Totally.
Jesus. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
well, Jesus said this, and it's like, who cares who said
yeah,
what? The point
yeah.
is, Is the guy getting fed? Is the Good Samaritan being tended to, if you want to
Right.
use that metaphor?
Well,
So,
and this is my point about the fact that if we can demonstrate these declarations of faith, it can be used to justify within ourselves the fact that we're not actually obeying him, that we're not doing what he said to do. I mean, I've said, like I've gotten in front of churches and I said, what makes somebody a child of God? What makes somebody, just throwing it out. And I always get from evangelical audiences, accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior, becoming a Christian, some form of that. I said it's interesting because Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." That it's actually someone who is engaging in building bridges between conflict. That is, when the temperature is going up, they're interceding and bringing the temperature down. That in a
mm,
polarized world, it should be the Christians that are putting water on the fires rather than stoking the flames. And so that is my biggest critique of this form of Christianity is, and to me, it's revealed the dark underbelly that many of us suspected was there, and it's just become evident for many of us.
yeah, I agree. And to that point, and to my earlier thing about Saint Francis, with my conversation with my friend, I ended up I just blurted this out, and I can hardly believe I said it. I said it and kind of surprised myself. I'm going to have to think about that. But the minute anyone makes, whether it's Christian or not, whether anyone makes an ethical statement and makes it a function of their faith, you have just caused division.
Hmm.
Even if under the best of intentions, with the best of motives, you have just caused a division because, I would like to agree with you and co labor with you and work with you. But if you're going to make this about your religion, I'm sorry.
No, yeah,
I can't go there with you. I just cannot. So, what I said to my friend that I blurted out was like, it seems to me that the only viable faith is a completely silent faith.
hmm,
And by silent, I don't mean I'm not trying to shut anybody up. It's not that.
yeah,
It's just, can your faith show up in your life in such a way that you're one of those people that you just described, more Christian than a Christian,
yeah, yeah. I've been trying to walk that walk myself because I consider myself a follower of Christ. Like I still identify as a Christian. Those things, but the thing is, and this is something I learned from Peter Rollins, who's somebody's teachings has really helped me over the years. I hold all of those things with a very loose hand, and I think, or loose fist. I said, or he said something like, I might have more theological agreement with some of the MAGA folk than I have with you, Joe. But because they hold those beliefs so tightly and I hold them loosely, it doesn't mean that I hold them any less. Like, do I believe that Jesus is the Son of God? I do. I feel sometimes they hold it so tight because deep down they have doubts themselves, and if they give an inch, the whole thing's going to collapse. Whereas I
mhm.
feel like I have examined my faith over and over again from the inside. I know where the holes are. I know where the things are that I can't justify outside my own personal experience. And so I never try to push those things. All I can do is if you experience it the way I'm experiencing it, then we could chat about it. But I would never link my ethical. Well, I don't want to make it sound like, I mean, Jesus gives me a lot of the impetus for my ethical choices. But I don't want to say that I'm doing them just because I'm a Christian. I want to say I'm doing them because I'm human. I remember when Ethan was born, there was some concern about him possibly being Down syndrome, and they were going to do this invasive test to see.
Amniocentesis thing.
Yes, thank you. But there was like a 1% chance that it could cause an abortion. And we were like, no, we
Mhm.
don't want to do that. And they said, are you choosing to do that because of your Christian belief? The hospital actually asked that because of our position on abortion. I said yes. And then I said no. I thought about it for a second. I said, no, no. It's because it's my child. It's not because I'm a Christian. And I realized that I'm not going to use my Christianity as kind of the shield for these kind of things. It's like, this is a choice I make because it's my child, not because I'm a Christian. And I think that's the point you're kind of getting at, is that you can just make these choices based on our shared humanity. You don't have to put the Christian bow on it.
Right. Um, I think what you just said is beautiful, and I think that's the central idea that one question I've asked my band members this:
Yeah,
do you think I'm going to hell? I mean, I don't believe in
yeah,
hell,
sure.
but do you think I'm going to hell? Because this says more about what
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what you think and believe and what kind of person you are than what I
Not at
am.
all. Not at all, Joe.
Um,
I
right, right.
have, yeah.
You get all kinds of different answers,
Oh,
from, well, who
yeah.
am I to judge, to, well, if God is just, no, you will just be annihilated. And as if that's supposed to let God
Thanks.
off the hook,
Thanks.
right.
Thanks, friend.
Everyone else will go to heaven, but not you. You'll just get wiped out,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Lucky you.
And so we make all these kinds of ethical justifications. And you just said that your faith gives you the ethical impetus. I don't think, having studied the history of ethics, at least at a surface level, I've read a number of books on it, but there's very little in any religion that started with that religion or originated in that
Sure,
religion.
sure. Yeah.
Those ethical, going all that way back to the Code of Hammurabi or whatever it was,
Yeah.
the
I
Sumerians and
have
ancient
you
China. And
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think there is a Christian uh they corner the market on ethics. I mean, the other religions teach good ethics as well. Have you read though? I got for Christmas last year Tom Holland, the historian, not Spider-Man. He likes to say on his podcast, "I'm the Tom Holland historian, not Spider-Man." But he wrote a book called Dominion, and it talks about the impact that Christianity has had on shaping ethics in the Western world for the last 2,000 years. And there is a measure where I push back a little bit against the argument that says um, there is nothing unique about Christianity. What he would argue is, in the gist of it, is the whole idea of welcoming the immigrant, of putting dignity on individuals. It's not that it would be exclusive to Christianity, but it definitely changed a lot of culture, starting with the Roman culture and spreading out from that.
right.
And
Yeah,
it was
no argument there.
yeah, there was a definite different culture that was at, and people could tell they were Christians because they were living in a different way. And I think one of the problems we've got in America, I've said this before, I think sometimes the Chinese government understands Christianity more than the American government, because the Chinese government sees Christianity as you know, a king other than Xi, being, basically having loyalty to an authority greater than the Communist Party. Whereas America bypasses that dual obligation and they outsource Jesus to the afterlife affairs. Like, he becomes the undersecretary of afterlife affairs. While you're this side of heaven, you be a chaplain for America. You bless our troops, you endorse our wars, you do, and then the kingdom of God can be after you die. And I think one of the biggest things that's changed in my, for lack of a better term, deconstruction and reconstruction, is the idea that the kingdom of God is not something for the afterlife. It's something to model here, and it's counterintuitive to a lot of the way we live the world. And so I'm hoping in a small way that the things I do and the way I interact with the world will, people will say, well, why is he doing that different? And I'm not doing it so maybe then I can strategically share Jesus with them. It's more just, this is the way I want to live. It makes for a more flourishing life, both for my family and those around me. So, yeah, that's,
And see, that point of view is something that I can absolutely identify with, and I would even say, in that sense, regardless of the theology attached to it, we're brothers.
yeah,
that it's the kind of life I want to live too. I want to live a life where I bring only good into the world. That every act I have is not harmful and beneficial in some way for all sentient beings. I mean, uh, uh, there's lots of ways that shows up, but your path, Steve, is I guess this is a weird term, but as I mature in my atheism, in my atheism, I also want to and can respect and acknowledge that everybody else has a path too. And it's not about me being right or you being wrong or me being wrong or you being right and on which point and what
Yeah.
the Bible says and what the Bible doesn't say. It's that there is I believe, you might call it a Christian heart. I might call it an evolved human heart or something
Yeah.
that gets to the heart of the matter, and that
Yeah.
is that love one another. And there's two commandments: love one another and love God. And by the way, the love God part is only indicated by the first part, loving one
Yeah.
another. Because the one who says he loves God but doesn't take care of his brother is a liar, and the truth isn't in him.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
all boils down to the one thing.
Yeah. Well, that's why whenever, and I think we've even talked about doing a topic on this before, or a discussion on this topic before, is uh, what is belief and what is a believer? Because I used to say when I was in my previous role at the school I'm at, I've gone back to full-time teaching now. So for the first time in many, many years, I have no official Christian component in my life. But when I had a team, I would say to them, they would say, "Oh, this teacher's a Christian. This teacher's a Christian. We should see if this teacher wants to help." And it's interesting. If I went out and I asked, if, as a thought experiment, "Hey, Jesus, could you go throughout our whole school and tell us which ones are followers of you, and come back with that list?" I said,
Mm-hmm.
the funny thing is we would have a Venn diagram. We'd have Christians on one side, we'd have followers of Christ on the other, and there would be some connection point between them, but we'd be shocked by who Jesus considers one of his followers and who we see as being a Christian. And I think this is why these declaration statements, rather than ethical obedience, have become our identification markers, because it's much easier to say, I declare Jesus as my personal Lord and Savior. He died for my sins, blah, 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 than to love your neighbor. But Jesus would say, listen, I think in the Gospel of John with Peter, who did people say that I am? Oh, some say you're Elijah, some say you're, the prophet come back. Well, who do you say that I am? Oh, I think you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Don't tell anybody that, Peter, you know. And I'll have some people say, well, it's because, he's trying to keep it down low because he didn't want to get crucified too early. There was a timing that was happening. And I say, okay, I can see that's a possibility, but I think it's more likely that Jesus was like, you know what? If we start getting in an argument about whether I'm the Christ or not, some people say I'm just a prophet, some say I'm just a good teacher. If it degenerates into that, people are going to forget that I've told you to love one another. Like, keep your eye on the ball. Whether I'm the Christ or not is secondary. I mean, yes, if you identify, he says that's a good thing, that you see this, but I'm not requiring it of people. He's not saying, oh, it's a good thing you see that, Peter. Otherwise, you'd go to hell and be separated from me from all eternity.
Right.
It's like, when you think about it, it's nonsense. You can see what was prioritized in Jesus. It wasn't getting everybody to recognize who he was. If you did, great, but that's secondary to obeying the teachings and creating a flourishing life for yourself and those around you.
So obeying the teachings, I love all that. Obeying the teachings is hard enough. And I hope this comes off right. But all of that other stuff, that theological stuff,
Hmm.
it seems to me like theological navel gazing. What's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point? If the point is the ball that I'm supposed to keep my eye on,
Yeah.
um, all
I,
this other stuff. I mean, if you want to go there, great. Not you. I'm saying if people want to go there, fantastic. Let them go there. But that is not a substitute. It's not even a good. It's just completely, I think, missing the point. Um,
sorry.
I
Give
had
me
I'll say,
give me
go
one
ahead.
second. Sorry. No, that's what it is. I'm getting a phone ring. It's Andrew inviting me to a group call. Gonna say no. I got Joe Taylor on phone here.
Oh, your brother Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably to do with my mom. We every 2 or 3 days we do a group call. I didn't
Oh man.
he knew I was doing this soon, but I didn't tell him exactly when. But they were both very jealous. I got a copy of
Oh, I
your
hope they like it. I hope they
yeah.
like it. But
I'm sure they will.
it's
They
different. It's different than Undercover, and it's different than my first record. But
I've listened to
it,
some Undercover much more since I've gotten to know you, and so I was a little more prepared for that style of music, and I was pleasantly surprised because I'm kind of in a stage of my life where, as much as I still like punk and rock, I like a melodic, introspective where I can just lay in my bed and stare up at the ceiling and ponder life, the universe, and everything.
yeah, hope you got a little of that anyway.
I did. I did. I wanted to ask you
Um,
when we were interacting on Facebook the other day, and we were talking about who we're blaming, the Democrats or the evangelicals. And I said, oh, we should discuss this because I said in 2016, I like my fury was leveled at the tribe I'd come out of. But by 2024, I mean, I've kind of accepted this is just the way they are. I had expected the Democrats during that 4 years to do it so much better. And I just thought, how bad is it that, as bad as Trump is polling, you guys are polling worse? Like, how bad could you guys screw up? And I don't think they could have. I mean, Biden, of course, did some good things, infrastructure, a lot of stuff he didn't get credit for. But I think it was largely because of so many bad decisions made during that 4 years.
I think I know which bad decisions you're referring to, but how would you which ones specifically are you would you mean by that?
I think the two that jump out, I read Jake Tapper's book, Original Sin, and his whole original sin was if he had bid the bridge candidate and done what he originally said he was going to do and had said, I'm not going to run again, and used the 4 years to raise up the next generation and had a nice transition, that would have been sorted. Two, I've said before, take away the immigration issue and you take a lot of the steam out of MAGA. And this affects what's happening with right-wing populism in Europe as well. It's fueled by immigration. For 40 years, I mean, we can argue the ins and outs, rights and wrongs of illegal immigration. That's a whole different discussion. But the sensibilities of America and Europe, for that matter, has been, by and large, there's too much cultural fragmentation. There's a too much illegal immigration. We feel like we're losing our identity. And the Democrats failed to address that. Trump, for all his problems, he did what he said he was going to do. He closed the border. And there's almost no illegal immigration. Why are the Democrats incapable of being effective?
Well,
So,
you're asking the wrong guy.
So those are the two biggest problems. I think if they had done both of those things, because I said before, if the Democrats are not willing to deal with illegal immigration in a humane way, the Republicans will bring Trump back who will do it in an inhumane way. So your choice is, are you going to deal with it humanely or inhumanely? And their inability to deal with it at all left us with the inhumane choice.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, Steve. I mean, there
Okay.
was an immigration bill drafted by the Gang of Eight. It was
Yes.
bipartisan, and it
No.
passed the Senate, it passed the House, and then they got the thumbs down from Trump. So, we did it by playing by the rules, and
Yeah.
that didn't work. And so it was, I think it was more a matter of messaging. I'm
Mm.
not trying to say that the
No.
Democrats had the right
Yeah.
solution or that that was the right solution, but that was,
No.
um,
And you're right.
uh,
The argument there is it was too little too late. They should have done that closer to the beginning, right when they'd come in. It looked too much like, yeah, we've opened up the border for 3 years. Now let's fix this is obviously a huge problem. Let's fix it. Which then Trump, wrongly used it for a political tool. He doesn't really care about it. He used it for so you're absolutely right. Um, but I mean, illegal immigration exploded under the Democrats. Rather than
yes.
seeing this is what the American people want to have addressed, they seem incapable of addressing what America is asking for.
Okay, so you and I might have a bit of a difference on that whole idea of losing our identity and
Mhm.
um,
Oh,
our
I'm not
culture,
even,
and
I'm not even like weighing in on it, myself. This
that
is
is
what
the
this,
argument. Yeah,
but that is the sensibility that's out there. Yeah.
right, and so I don't necessarily perceive that as a problem.
Hmm.
I'm along the diversity is our strength camp,
Yeah.
which of course a, a that's a red herring in the
Yeah.
MAGA crowd. But you're right that once that immigration bill failed, they did nothing about it. And I think it's just one of the ways that Biden just failed to understand the assignment. And that
Hmm.
was the assignment was, as you said, to pass the torch.
Hmm.
He even said that was his purpose, that he was a transitional president. I'm only going to run for one term. He didn't reform SCOTUS,
Hmm.
gave it a nod and a wink, we'll form this commission. And oops, they said don't do anything. Well, here we are,
Hmm.
one third of the SCOTUS appointed by this guy. He's got the Supreme Court, the Congress, and the House, the Senate, and the House in his pocket, and now he's got all three branches. Uh, I think Biden monumentally failed the assignment. And then when he finally did pass the torch to Kamala, it was too little too late. And then there's all this talk about,
Yeah.
well, we didn't have a primary and we should have, and messaging. And I don't know. I just think that we are such a mess,
Hmm.
Steve. And there's another part of me that says, okay, illegal immigration. I follow a lot of people on across the political spectrum on Blue Sky,
Hmm.
including Joe Walsh, the former Tea Party congressman.
Hmm.
And he, who by the way is anti-Trump, never Trumper, but he said all along the way, he agreed with you that if Democrats, it's the immigration thing that's going to lose them the election.
Yeah.
Turns out to be right. But I'm perplexed personally. I'm like, okay, so we didn't solve the immigration problem. This is who you're going to go with?
Hmm.
34 felony convictions,
Yeah.
adjudicated rapist, found liable for fraud in multiple cases. His university, his charity is shut down for fraud. This is the guy you're going to go with because we didn't solve immigration. Help me circle that one because
No, yeah. I know, I agree. And it's that perplexity I had for a long time. I've kind of bought into the Bill Maher, where we have to talk. We can't. I'm very centrist. Like I'm realize in some areas I'm a little bit on the liberal side. I'm very centrist, and I'm finding even my being centrist makes me open to attacks from a month or so ago when Charlie Kirk gets killed. I'm not by any stretch a Charlie Kirk fan. All kinds of problems with the way he engages with things. But I felt I needed to acknowledge something. And so I don't know if you saw my post. I essentially said something like, despite what anybody may feel about the positions that Charlie Kirk, argues for, I said, I think as Americans, we should all be horrified that this act of political violence could happen to a husband and to a father. You know, I tell you, Joe, I was getting private message from people. I was on a separate private progressive church group that I really respect these folk. One of the ladies just really laid into me. Like they had to educate me. He said this, he said this. Like I know he said this. I'm just saying, can we, on the day that he was assassinated, I don't want the day that I'm a sad, like I'm died, that everybody brings up every bad thing that I've ever, like, I get why people feel angry because I said I equally I have a problem with the MAGA crowd that is trying to martyr him and make him Saint Charlie. I have a huge issue with that. I also have an issue with the Democrat liberal side pull out every statement, every quote that he has that's objectionable. Okay, like I get it, but can we just for like a week or two? Can we just come together as a country? Can we just mourn that an act of political violence occurred on our soil and we should all be unified in that this is wrong? And apparently that's not the case.
Yeah, people want to score political points no matter what, I guess, and even in the wake of tragedy. I have to always fall back on ethics, Steve.
Yeah.
And when people ask me about my political leanings, all right, I am in the state of Washington here. We don't register by political party.
Right.
Am I going to vote Democratic 9 times out of 10? Yes, but it's not because I'm a party, because I toe the party line or anything like that. I just think that the things that are important to me, and including the assassination of Charlie Kirk, look, it's a lot of causes, and we can talk about
Yeah.
the dilemma of young males in our country and video
Yeah.
games and all of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can't avoid the topic of guns and gun legislation. It's a big pet peeve of mine in our country that we just cannot get past this or get over it. There's only one party, I think, that has any kind of sensibility about what to do about guns. I'm going to vote that way.
Yeah.
And it's the same way on. So for me, all of these political things are not so much political statements as much as they are statements of values and
Hmm.
moral and ethic. So you're right. I mean, as a human being, we should be able to we should be able to decry political violence, no matter where, how it shows up, no matter who is at
Yeah.
fault, whether it's Paul Pelosi or Charlie Kirk or the congressmen that were killed in Minnesota
Yeah.
or Steve Scalise getting shot playing baseball. You know, it's all awful. I
Mm.
just am not optimistic about our country, and shoot, maybe it's 8 years of this. I don't know, going on 12, but look how far we've dropped in 10 months, and where are we going to be in 3 more years? Uh,
Joe, I just spent a week in Guangzhou, China, and I was struck by I grew up with an America that compared to Europe, the scale of everything in America was just so much bigger. We built the biggest this and we did the biggest that, and we were American. We did big things. You go to China now, and you take that scale, and it's like America's become the Europe. The scale in which they do things is unbelievable. Like you have to go there to see it. I mean, they've just opened their second indoor ski area that's within like a 20-minute drive of Hong Kong. I went skiing in this massive, I mean, it was absolutely gigantic. It has like 6 ski runs, all indoors with real snow. Like
wow.
it's just,
Mm.
and when you see just the interaction and how they do uh, the buildings, everything is big and bold and tech. It just makes everything look backward. Whereas it used to, I've been part of the China story for 35 years. I can tell you when they were Shenzhen was a backyard fishing village that they decided they were going to turn into a mega city. And I watched that build over to 35 years. And no one up until 5 years ago would have ever thought Shenzhen would overtake Hong Kong as the place to be, the mover
Mm.
and shaking. Everybody on the weekends is going to Shenzhen from Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is trying to figure out how does it get its mojo back because of its unique history and the border and its own currency and its own law and different things. There's unique advantages Hong Kong has, but I keep thinking this is still part of China, Hong Kong, whereas America, China's coming for America, man, and it's like it's going to
Oh,
eat us for lunch.
absolutely. There's some truth to what Khrushchev said. We will bury you, and it's not because we will bury you, but you're going to bury yourselves. We'll
Yeah,
bury you from the inside. Look, for everything from, we can't even get bullet trains going off the ground here.
yeah, yeah.
Mass transportation or climate change or any kind of renewable energy initiatives. It's all seen as, I don't know, socialism or
Oh, Trump's trying to
uh,
bring back
the
coal.
government's too big. Government, yeah. So I'm watching us fall behind in many, many different ways, and we're still the largest economy in the world. But I'm just kind of scratching my head, going, "Well, how long is that gonna last?"
Oh, my
Y-
biggest when
y-
I try to communicate with people that are old enough to remember this, I said, picture Rocky 3 when Balboa is going against Mr. T and the little montage back and forth. Rocky is the heavyweight champ of the world. He's the undisputed champ. and he's just kind of resting on his laurels. He's in the training center. It's all so it wasn't social media yet, but the balloons are going, the girls are walking by, there's bubbles, and Mickey the trainer's going, "Can we get all these people out of here? I got to get you back into the ring and the sweat and the gruel." And they keep juxtaposing Mr. T, who's just in a basement, just doing these pull-ups. And I'm just thinking, this is China and America right now. America is Rocky Balboa. It thinks he's the undisputed champ. And there's this other country that's in a basement that is just ripping itself with a singular vision of getting in the ring with that guy and knocking his block off. Now,
Mhm.
I'm not saying necessarily those are watching this, like I'm saying that it necessarily has to be war. It could be economically. It could just be geopolitical, overtaking of. There's a number of factors that could come there. Um, but
Oh, it's across a wide range of things too. If you listen to the Prime Minister of Canada talk about the trade relationship that's historically been the case with America is over. You
yeah,
look at America's stance towards NATO and
it's
Ukraine, and now Europe having to build its own weapons to defend one of its own. We are totally turning the post World War II world order on its ear,
yeah.
and I think we have yet to even imagine what that's going to mean for us down the road.
And
In
this comes
terms,
back to my anger for the Democrats because everything you said, I mean, I voted for Biden. I voted for Harris. I'd never voted Democrat for president before in my life. Um, I would never vote for Trump for all the reasons you just mentioned. For me, the what he's done to our standing in the world it's going to take us decades to rebuild if we're able to rebuild it. To me, if you get the right people in after him, we could rebuild it. But I just read kind of coming back to the China thing. I just read a good article, and it was saying the one thing that America has that China doesn't have is allies around the world. China doesn't really have allies. It has strategic allies like Russia, North Korea, but they don't really get along. Whereas America has, decades, if not in some cases centuries old relationship with a lot of the Western powers, a lot of different powers around the world. And the only thing it can do is leverage that against the scale that China brings to the table. If it fragments that, it is putting itself in a position where it cannot compete. It cannot compete by
uh,
itself. It has to be in one step with Europe, with NATO, with Australia, with Japan. If it fragments that relationship, it's really going to be hard for it to engage.
we're doing our best to erode those
We,
alliances and those partners. You know, tariffs and from tariffs and just the whole NATO thing.
who picks a fight with Canada?
For crying out loud, you know.
It's just
What I was going to
it's
say
insane.
though, when you talk about who gets in next and when it's going to take a decade to write this, that's even an optimism I can't allow myself to go to yet
Uh,
because if you get again an establishment Democrat that's going to play by the rules, you know, America is just going to be more of the same. The Senate's going to be closely divided. They won't get anything done. There's still the electoral college. There's still the fact that that Wyoming and Wisconsin or Wyoming rather have the same number of senators as California, and just I think I just think we're back to the same. It's going to be incremental shifts along this axis of failure.
yeah, yeah. Well,
And
but well, this is where I think, and this is coming back to my finger pointing at the Democrats. I don't know if you follow Ezra Klein much. Um,
I do read his stuff.
yeah, but he was just with I think is it Tennessee Coates? I think I just watched a whole interview that the two of them had, and he was just saying how Democrats have to learn how to win again. And he says, if we're going to be able to win states like Kentucky, we've got to be able to we have to have a broader umbrella of what can be a Democrat. Why can't a pro-life Democrat be running in Kentucky, in areas of the country where you're going to have to moderate some of the views that you would have in California. I remember Nancy Pelosi saying this about AOC, 4 or 5 years ago, when AOC was, you got to take this hard liberal line. And Pelosi saying, well, it's easy for her to say that in the district where she has no competition whatsoever. But in a lot of the country, you've got to be able to feel the temperature of your constituency, and you're going to have to meet where that constituency is. If you're, you know, putting up a bar that they're not even, going to consider, well, you're just going to lose power. And this is what Ezra Klein's argument was. We can have all these noble goals, but if we're not in power, what does it matter?
You're right, and that's true. But even if we are in power, I think that constituency, if you take the temperature of your constituency and bring that voice into Congress, you're not going to get. I think, in my opinion, you're not going to get some of these things done that need to be done.
Hmm.
You're not going to get meaningful gun legislation. You're not going to get initiatives that you're not going to get a just Supreme Court. There's always going to be that close vote, that filibuster, that something. I
Yeah.
just don't have faith in our country right now. We don't have the mindset that's required. And maybe that's what it is, the mindset, or maybe I think that I hate to say it, but I think Obama was right that the country is fixated on God and guns, and
Hmm. Yeah.
religion drives a lot of policy, and I think a lot of that policy is harmful
But
to our
don't you
country.
also
And
But don't you also find, because when I was growing up in the conservative circles, and then when I started kind of questioning, my early 20s, and, it's a whole process. But I remember even being with a conservative think tank guy in Colorado when I was in grad school there. And he said, one of the hard things about being a conservative Republican is the liberal Democrats have a lot more fun. They get a lot more fun. We were just kind of joking about this. Yeah, we're the uptight conservative Republicans, and
uh,
now it's flipped. In my view, if I had to be honest, it's the liberals with no sense. And I hate categorizing people in those groups. I kind of question when people do it, and then I fall into it. But for sake of trying to explain myself, it's the liberal minded person who is less tolerant, who they might lack that religion, uh, declaration, but that fundamentalism spirit is still there. Like if there is certain sins in their mind, and if you break those things, then you are cast aside. You are sent out, just like we would have done in a fundamentalist church. I see almost the same system framework operating in a lot of liberal circles to the point where even stand-up comedians are noticing it and bringing it up, just saying how hard it is to be a liberal because I think it was he says, you get with the conservatives and they'll be, oh, I don't really, I'm a conservative, but I think there should be gay marriage. Okay, you'll come around to it. But on the liberal, oh, I'm a liberal. And other liberals just go, we'll see. It,
well, I don't know. I have plenty of fun, Steve. I don't.
I think,
I
yeah,
personally,
sure.
I think personally, yes, that there are those. You want to call them woke,
Yeah.
super extreme on the left, and all right, we can go there if you want, but I don't see that in the mainstream of of the Democrats' power infrastructure. Look, we're not the party that wants to ban books
Okay. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
prevent DEI
Yeah.
or limit women's health care, reproductive choices. I see this, at least my view
Yeah.
of liberalism is we are the party of freedom, not the conservatives.
See, and that's the way it should be. And that's the way, and I agree with you that there is an extremeness on the fringes that is getting a lot of the attention. But and granted, the Republicans are not doing this to Trump, so why should the Democrats? But when those real extreme ideas come out, you didn't see Biden coming out and saying, we're all for affirming the marginalized and like for trans rights, people who are living this way, but there is a argument to be made for trans, athletes in women's sports or something like that.
Right, right, right,
You
right.
know, he will not say it. And this is another one of my big critiques of the Democrats is the unrestrained liberal voice is not corrected by the centrists. There's a feeling on the right of this that everybody feels this way on the Democrats because you don't really hear any pushback when something crazy is said. And
Well,
I could say
okay,
the same
so
thing on the
first,
right too. I mean, I can level that on the right too.
right. Well, I mean, so on the one hand, I could argue that the extremist policies on the left are extremist policies on the left. The extremist policies on the right are policy.
Mm.
They're congressional and presidential,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
there's that. It's only these nuts on the left that are saying this stuff, if you want to call them nuts. I'm just using the term that they would use. But having said all that, too, Gavin Newsom is saying this.
yeah.
Gavin
Oh,
Newsom
yeah,
is pushing back on this. He's taken a lot of heat for his stance on transgender people in
yeah,
sports. I just read articles on it yesterday, and so he's going to lose a constituency.
yeah,
And okay, we'll get another 4 years of MAGA then, if that's what
yeah,
we need. Uh,
yeah.
we can't seem to punch our way out of this paper bag.
Well, see, this is my issue with the Democrats is that if you're not with me on this issue, and right after the election, New York Times came out with a really telling uh, poll, and it asked, "What are Americans' biggest concerns?" And it was like the economy and high cost of products and things, and mostly economy related. And then it asked, oh, and immigration. Immigration was one of the three. And then
Mhm.
it's asked, what is your perception of the priorities of the Republican Party? And it was basically matching up with that. And then it said,
Right.
and what is the priorities of the Democratic Party? And it was LGBTQ rights, it was trans rights. And it's like, well, you can see the disconnect here. The average America is thinking, even though I got all kinds of problems with Trump, at least he's talking about the issues that mean something to me. Now, put aside the fact that he doesn't really care about those issues and he's just using the office to make his own, money. You can see for the average voter, they're looking at the Democrats. I mean, even who's the guy that one of the talking heads? I hate when I get on these interviews, and I could do it if we were just talking over a table, but when we're in an
Yeah, yeah,
interview,
yeah.
it's like, who is that guy?
Or you
And
can
he and
edit
he
this out.
yeah, and he's on the left, but he was saying after the election, he goes to the Democratic website and it says the Democratic Party is for, and it said, for LGBTQ, for women, people of color, da 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 da, women, and he goes, there's no white males in there, like there was nothing. He said later they finally added a white male in the background, but they didn't mention it in who the Democratic Party is for. And he said, can you imagine? I mean, a vast majority of this country, the Democratic Party is saying, we don't advocate for you. So do you think they're going to start to gravitate if they feel the Democratic Party does not advocate for them? It'd be like me being in Hong Kong. Yeah, there's a lot of different ethnicities in Hong Kong, but if I started a political party that didn't focus on the concerns of Chinese people, it would be dead in the water.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so Steve, I could say that I don't know that Biden or any Democrat that has run prominently for any office that, hey, my main priority is LGBTQ and trans rights.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a perception. And I don't think it's a true perception. I mean, because if you want
I
to
don't
know
think it
who
is.
manages
Yeah.
the economy better, the Democrats or
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Republicans, it wouldn't take me a New York minute to
Oh,
pull up data that shows you that the country did better
yeah.
economically with regard to debt, GDP,
Mhm.
income, and wage growth under Democrats than it does Republicans.
I totally agree
So
with you. So what's the communication issue? What's the
it's a
like?
messaging issue
Yeah,
partly, but you heard that during Biden's run. It's like, Joe, why aren't you messaging your successes? Why aren't you trumpeting your successes? Because they are substantial and huge.
yeah,
Instead we get on the right, they're eating the pets, they're eating the cats,
yeah,
and
yeah.
people just fall right into line. So I was in Nashville on election day at the airport, ready to fly back to the Pacific Northwest here with Jim. We were coming back from Sim's daughter's wedding. And I'm in the airport in the afternoon on election day, anticipating the returns starting to come in. And there was this one sports bar or something had all these TV screens up on the wall, And one of the news outlets had the poll up that you might have been referring to. What
Hmm.
are the American people's top three priorities? And they were just as you said: immigration, the economy, and something else. I don't know,
Yeah.
crime or something like
Yeah.
that. And my heart just sunk immediately. I knew we were going to lose the election as
Yeah.
soon as I saw that.
Yeah. And I actually said it that morning. I was watching Joe and Mika, Morning Joe, and Mika was saying how, oh, because of what happened with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, that women are really going to come out. And she was saying it with so little enthusiasm. I thought, we've lost this. Trump is going to, at the end of today, Trump is going to be the president. I felt it by what Mika Zabrinsky was saying and the way she was saying it. I thought, we've lost this.
Yeah, and I'm perplexed by I'm gobsmacked
Yeah.
maybe among a number of others, but it just didn't go our way, and so here we are, and I think we got the president we deserve as a country.
I've said for years, every
It,
country gets the government they deserve, and America has become an entertainment fueled. Basically, Trump is the personification of what America has become. And I think
Very
that's
sad.
why I think that's why what you're hearing from me is much more this barbs to the Democrats because I had this equal fury towards the evangelicals in 2016, 2017. Like I was just so livid. I was able to keep most of my relationships through a little diplomacy and smiling, but I lost quite a bit of few friends. I was really angry. Like I felt betrayed from the people that had told me what right and wrong are going down this road. And maybe I don't feel that strongly about the Democrats because I was never a Democrat, but I voted for them twice and I've been aligning with them much more over the last 10 years. And I just was thinking, you guys fumbled this ball so bad. I think it was the one comedian said, we've annoyed the American people so much. The Democrats have annoyed the Americans so much, we've annoyed them into fascism. That's and
There's probably an element of truth in that, but I really do think that there's going to have to be a reinventing of the game. It's going to
yeah,
take a populism. I'm a Democrat again only because of ethics, not because of any kind of party loyalty.
sure.
But we're lost. We are in the desert. We are completely lost, and it breaks my heart because Reagan's city on a hill, or maybe that was Bush that said that.
Yeah, it's Reagan. Yeah,
Or well, it's a scriptural verse, but who was it? The land of a thousand lights, or whatever. I think that's a
yeah,
Bush thing.
yeah. Bush had the
But
land of a
that's
thousand lights, but Reagan had city on a hill. Yeah,
yeah. So that has totally vanished. We are now and I'm in Portland. Okay, so there's we're now the we've got armed troops, masked troops, secret police in the streets, arresting and tear gassing American citizens. Forget mass transit and bullet trains and climate change. We can't even you've got the governor of Illinois begging the feds to leave children alone on Halloween. That's where we are.
yeah, yeah,
So for any hope of not only leading but joining the modern global economy, it just is, I think, gone for the foreseeable future. Maybe for my lifetime.
yeah.
I don't think no matter who gets in, it's going to take way longer than a decade,
Well,
not
and
only
but
to rebuild but to put an infrastructure in place that will not allow this again.
the thing is, it's not unique to America. It's happening across Europe. It's happening in Germany. Nigel Farage is getting ready to become the new prime minister. Most polls show him leading. And so I've got my British friends. I got a lot of British friends here. They're pulling their hair out of their head at the idea of Nigel Farage becoming the prime minister. But it's for the same reason it happened in America. Again, it comes back to I don't think people on. I'm not even going to put it all the left. I mean, there is a centrist part of this too that can't read the room. And the room has been speaking a certain way. And unless we're willing to at least make some accommodation there, we're going to be pulling our hair out because this person's getting elected, this person's getting elected. And this is coming back to Ezra Klein's thing. If you don't win elections, we've got to be willing to compromise on a few things. And people are like, we can't compromise our values. Obama said that marriage was between a man and a woman during the 2008 election because America
Mhm.
was not at a place where it was going to tolerate that. We were just a few years away from it. And then he made the shift at the appropriate time. But nobody gave him, what Newsom is getting for his position on trans athletes and women's sports is nothing. He's getting this huge amount compared to what Obama got. Back then, it was like, let's just win the election. Now it's like we don't care about winning the election. We we have these values, and yeah, and that's just going to keep electing MAGA after
No, and
MAGA.
I see that. I saw that during the last election with Kamala and Trump. I had a lot of students that were saying they weren't going to vote at all because of Biden's stance on Israel and Gaza.
Yeah,
And it's just another okay. We're going to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, I guess.
it's
So
it's
this is your
it's it's
choice. This is what you end up with.
yeah. And, being a history buff myself, I really feel given a choice between the Weimar Republic and Nazi Germany, people are going to choose Nazi Germany. They might not like Nazi Germany, but the idea of a fecal, flaccid, navigationless Weimar Republic is much worse than at least, yeah, he may be taking us strongly in the wrong direction, but at least he's strongly doing it. Guys like you and me are like, no, I'd rather possibly even take the Weimar Republic. But for the average American, this guy's voicing some stuff that I've been saying in the pub for a long time. And it comes down to somebody said to me once, this is the problem with the Democrats right now, is they don't pass the six guys in the pub test. What the average person in a pub get six guys in a pub, what do they feel about this situation? How do they feel about this policy? And Democrats, more often than Republicans, will be out of sync with those six guys in the pub. And that is the temperature of the country. So take that
Yeah,
for
well,
what it's
that's that.
worth.
Yeah, I know, and that's a kind of a statement. Is really is that how we want to govern a country based on the voices, the views of six guys in a pub? Look,
Mhm.
government is supposed to be boring. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
Policy and government organizations and institutions that that are the engine of getting people's social security checks to them and making sure our food is safe and the air we breathe and all of that stuff. It's boring.
Hmm.
But to your earlier point about entertainment, it's not loud enough. It's not. We're going to really bring it to the other guy. Punch him
Yeah.
out and uh, fuck your feelings and all that stuff. You know,
Yeah. No, it's true. It's
okay.
true. It's
And I think part of this is a failure of education. So, a quick example, when I got in discussions with friends about expanding the Supreme Court, which I think we need to do. And
mhm.
of course, they get on that. Well, if you do that, the Republicans will do that too. And I'm like, wait a minute. The number of justices on the Supreme Court not only has it changed over time, but you know this, Steve, that there's supposed to be one Supreme Court justice for every appeals court, for every circuit court in the nation.
Mhm.
When there were nine judges, there were nine circuits. Now there are 13 circuits, and that's where the number 13 comes from. There should be probably 13 Supreme Court justices, which I think, and then we can talk about term limits and all that other stuff, but
Yeah.
there's a failure of understanding how government works. I've asked friends who have a lot of money, successful businessmen, what are the three branches of government? Oh, well, there's the executive, there's the Senate, and there's the Congress.
Yeah. 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 No,
You,
it's
you know,
it's
um,
yeah.
there's this failure of economic education, failure of basic civics, of understanding how government works or how it's supposed to work, and that it's not sexy.
Mm.
It's boring.
Well,
But
yeah. No, no, I agree. It should be a democracy should be largely boring. I don't have a problem with expanding the court. I think, whether it's 9 or 13 is I don't have much of a say or opinion on that. The only thing I would say is under the old conventions, and this is what we've learned under Trump, how much of our democracy was actually built on social conventions that were just observed without it being written into law. So, you know, 30 years ago, if you're going to expand the court, if a Democratic president said we're going to expand the court from 9 to 13, there would have been consultation with the Republicans and how do we do it in a
Hmm.
fair and equitable way. My concern
Hmm.
is now is stacking the court. Well, we're not getting the decisions I want. Let's expand it. And because I'm the president right now, I get to put in my four people. That I would have a problem with because I don't want to see it stacked. I want to see. I love the tension. To me, our country works best when there is a healthy tension. And this has been some of my issues, and I think it's largely related to social media and Fox News demonizing the other side. Growing up, I never viewed the Democrats as my enemy. They were like the opposing baseball team. We all loved baseball. We just
Hmm.
saw a few things differently. I don't know where this demonization came. I know when I ran for Congress 20 years ago, I started to see it because I had friends that were Democrats. We would engage and we would talk. But I had people when I was running that would just demonize them. And fortunately, in 2004, that was the fringe. But the fringe became the representation, and then the average normal Republican got booted out with Liz Cheney.
Uh, well, I don't know that Mitch McConnell denying Obama a seat or even an interview was a healthy tension, as
Oh
you
no,
call it, but
both
or
sides in
slamming
the
through
last,
Amy Comey Barrett after during an
yeah.
election.
Oh no,
You
believe
know,
me, it should have been, but this goes back to the Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing
but
and what he did with Biden. I mean, same thing with Biden. If you had left when Biden was president, we wouldn't be having this big issue. But people do, and this is what was in that book, Original Sin. Jake Tapper really nails it. People talk about handing over power. We don't understand how difficult it is to hand over power. That's why I'm a huge George Washington fan. He could have been president for life. He really set the precedent. 2 terms and then out. We don't even realize how big a deal that is in the world. Like when people get power, they don't give power up. We're seeing it in the increase of authoritarianism. We're seeing now Trump talking about a third term and not
uh,
denying it.
mhm.
And then when Steve Bannon said we have to do a third term to finish what we started, it's the same thing Xi Jinping said when he broke precedent and got elected for a third term. We have to keep what we started going. This is the argument of the authoritarian of we've set something in place. Only I can see it through to completion.
That's Trump's very language.
That's it. Joe, I think
So,
I feel like we probably should draw this to a close. And I'm looking at my battery level. I thought, wow, we've been talking a while
yeah.
now. Um,
um,
any last thoughts or questions we
Well,
wanted to
yeah, I
ask?
mean, I have a question for you, Steve, and maybe this is something for another podcast, and maybe I'll put it on my web page. Have you as a guest for a
Yeah,
podcast on my website if you'd be willing to do that. But I think you're
anytime.
one of the few guys that I know that I could ask a question like this, and I kind of asked it in an earlier Facebook post that we didn't really get to. And that is the question of how do you, as a Christian, deal with what I consider fundamentally unethical beliefs, such as original sin? I brought them up
Oh
earlier.
yeah, yeah,
Forgiveness of sin and heaven and hell and
yeah,
eternal punishment and or I mean, I know probably where you stand on some of those issues, but how do you hold those conflicts uh, and still adopt that faith system?
yeah,
That's a big question, but I would really like your answer on that and to hear
yeah.
someone thoughtful such as you. So maybe I don't know. Maybe that I'll hit you up and maybe we can schedule another one of these.
Yeah, because that is opening up a whole big can of worms. Let me give you a gist, and we can maybe in a
Sure.
future podcast go into some of the more details of it. There's been a number of guys that have helped guide my theological understanding over the last 10, 15 years. I've said Brian Zahn, Rob Bell, Richard Rohr, Pete Rollins, um, Brad Jerzak, there's a couple others that have really helped shape a new understanding of my idea of what hell is, original sin, penal substitutionary atonement, uh, end times eschatology that I think is toxic, that is permeates a lot of MAGA. Um, when I realized that so many of these theological positions I'd grown up with and were given within the evangelical settings, when I found out later that other streams of Christianity don't hold to them or see them in a different light, or that historically Christians have not always been in agreement on this, that, and the other thing, I started to realize, okay, a lot of these positions are not Christian, they're evangelical Christian. It made me think of a skit Eddie Izzard did years ago, where he mimics the British showing up in India, and he basically how they took over the world with the strategic use of flags. And is like they plant the British flag, and the Indians go, "What are you doing?" Well, this is our land. Well, this is our land. We've been here for. Do you have a flag? And whenever I see evangelicals getting so hard nosed on a position that I think historical Christianity has not been univocal on, they have essentially put their imperial flag on a verse and said, this is what the interpretation is. This is what the meaning is. And if you don't agree with that, you are, depending on the severity of the verse, you're either a heretic or you're out of touch or, at different levels. And
Well, people
so,
were killed for those things,
oh,
people,
yes.
heretics were burned at the stake. And historically, you look at the Catholic Church, the main voice, the
Yeah.
founders of the church looking down at people in hell,
Mm.
celebrating their
Well,
suffering.
and
And
this is where it's just for me crazy in that I think my brother said to me a few years back, he said, Steve, one of the reasons we're able to have these conversations, I feel, is I know that you don't have a subtle, under the table desire to try to win me back to Christ because of hell. He thinks, he said, I think if you believe in hell, then you feel obligated to maneuver every situation to try to get me to come back to your side of or your way of thinking. But because I don't believe Joe Taylor uh, is going to hell, it frees me from all kinds of having to,
right,
win you back to some kind of position I hold.
yeah,
It's interesting. We might have talked about it when we talked last, if it was when my dad had passed. But I'd listened to this podcast by Bruce Grayson, who's a scientist and psychologist who's been studying near-death experiences for 50 years. But it's not like a paranormal thing. Like he's been at University of Michigan and chief of this, that at University of Virginia. He engages it with it solely from a naturalistic position. And, he's just come away after 50 years of, he's documented so many of these, and there's just so much that he's absorbed that he doesn't believe in particularly one religion or anything. If anything, when people die, and there's so many commonality and there's so much common stories. He said very few, he said like less than 1% experience those hellish moments of afterlife that are described. And he says, and what's interesting is it's only people who believed in them, like they come from a fundamentalist Christian background or a Catholic background. Like no one else is getting those experiences.
mm,
And by and large, everybody's having this very fruitful reunification with the divine. And he says some people will call it God, some people will call it, the different gods. Um, so he's not approaching it from any Christian viewpoint or anything like that. But I've read his book subsequently, and I think there's enough there for me to justify that there's something there.
mhm.
And that's what he would say. He goes, "Hey, as a scientist, I have to acknowledge I might not have all the, this, that, and other thing, but after 50 years, I've come to the conclusion." He says, "I'm no longer afraid of dying because I know what is on the other side is pleasant." That's the way he described it. It's pleasant. And
Oh,
it's kind of
I
shaped.
hope he's right.
Well, that's, and I think that kind of guides me. I think it's very likely there's some form of that. It seems to be the case, and and that's why I always think, well, I'll enjoy seeing Joe again and my brother, and
Your
I
father and
my
eventually your
dad.
mother.
That's it. I have a very optimistic view that we're all trying to figure this crazy world out. And no God of love, because we're all dealt different things, Joe. We all have different experiences. We all have different parents. We grew up in different cultures. I sometimes I see somebody on TV who's done some horrific thing, but maybe if my mom and dad abused me sexually when I was a child, maybe I'm the guy who's abusing children. I don't know. How do I judge? Yes, I can judge society. We have to, put that person behind bars and protect society. But we all bring different things to the table. And uh, why? Because I've been born into a middle class, white, American, fairly well off background with parents who love to be unconditionally. Do
And
I
you're
get,
male.
yeah, and a male,
And
all the things that kind of, then why I get to go to heaven, but somebody who has a shitty life and then makes shitty decisions because they had a shitty life, they go to, it just makes no sense to me.
there's
Yeah.
versions of God that disagree with that. And so that's the
Oh,
hump we
yeah.
always have to get over. What the minute someone says God, well, okay, what are you talking about here? What does
Yeah.
your God look like? Well, it's God.
Yeah.
Uh, I know we're short on time. I had two cousins. I've told
Yeah.
this before, but I had two cousins that are married old sisters.
Hmm.
One's passed on in her 90s, but they were blood sisters also, but they were also married old nuns. And retired. They went to the retirement home in Monrovia, California. I used to go visit them all the time and walk around the grounds, which were beautiful. And it turns out that they're both kind of Buddhist Catholics. The Buddhism as a practice, Catholic as a belief system. They love reading the scriptures, and we would always have these discussions, being in a Christian band and whatnot. And
Yeah.
this idea of heaven and hell came up, and they told me they were universalists. And I said, "You mean everyone's going to heaven?" "Oh yeah, we believe everyone's going to heaven." And of course, the natural question after that, even Hitler?
Yeah.
Yes, even Hitler.
Yeah.
And so we talk about it, and I said, "So it doesn't matter what I believe?" She says, "No, it doesn't matter what you believe. I think we're all going to be wonderfully surprised."
Hmm.
That was their word to me. We're all going to be pleasantly surprised, and may they be right. May it be so. I hope they are.
No, I know you would be. I think we all would be, of course. One of the last things I was thinking, there was a TV show in 2008, ran for 2 years, and unfortunately, I loved it, just didn't take off. But Johnny Lee Miller was in it. I just thought about it the other day, and so watched the first couple episodes. And he plays a lawyer who's, because of an aneurysm, starts seeing visions. In the first one, he sees George Michael singing Faith, and
Mm.
he starts to see things that are helping people. And but it also makes him look a little kooky and a little unstable. So he ends up going to a Chinese acupuncturist who is able to help him unpack these dreams. And the Chinese acupuncturist is saying, throughout history, different religions have all had their prophets. It's God's way of communicating, different things. And Johnny Lee Miller, the character Eli Stone is the name of the show. Eli Stone says, "But I don't even believe in God." And he goes, "Come on." He goes, "Do you believe?" And he goes down this list. Do you believe in compassion, equality? Do you believe in you know the marginalized, helping people and marginalized? He just goes down this list. He goes, "Yeah, of course." He goes, "Well, then you believe in God. God is those things. That is a personification of love in action, something like that." And when he said that, I thought, it's just so true. It's a stupid TV show, and yet it captured for me what I feel real belief is. It's like, yeah, people could disagree. Is God this object that occupies time, space that we should or should not be worshiping, and gives edicts on this, that, and the other thing? But everything that I've seen in Christ is all about the importance of loving people. Make sure you are compassionate to the point where you're even loving your enemy. And this is why I think MAGA never really puts the Beatitudes as front and center. They never really put Jesus as front and center because they can't get the God they're looking for in Jesus because they don't want to love their enemy. They want to
Mm.
so they go to the Old Testament. They do a somersault over Jesus, go to the Old Testament to get the God that they really want. And you can find that God in the Old Testament.
So yeah, I mean, I agree with almost all of that. It's just as you talk about working your way down the list or the list of empathy and all this stuff. My question is, why do we need to deify that in any way? Why isn't the list good enough on its own? Why do we have to attach a God label to it? Just
Yeah.
you can do that in, not you, but people can let
Yeah.
people do that in their own mind, but
Yeah.
let's just focus on the list. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of where I'm at. But
No, and that's fair
I,
enough, Joe. I mean, there's,
mm,
and again, what I said, we all bring our experiences. So assigning God to those attributes for some people might not be a big deal, but maybe because of your experiences, it kind of gives you that little jolt. I don't want to go there. And I really feel with God, that's fine. It's like the
it's
important
more like
thing
I don't
is,
understand what you mean. What when you say
yeah,
God, what's the
well,
ultimate social
yeah.
construct? What do you mean by that?
And that's where I would say,
uh,
because God could be this, that, and the other thing. For me, it's Jesus. That's why I keep bringing Jesus. Like uh, whether you want to call him God or not God or anything. And I might have shared this before. To me, I've had my own challenges, my own doubts, my own like, where do I go with this? You're basically following a 2,000-year-old dead Jewish carpenter. Like, explain that reasoning. But I just really feel that a guy who spends 3 years teaching everyone how we should be empathetic, love one another, love our enemy, go the extra mile, help people that need to be helped, and then we crucify him in the most horrific manner. And then he looks down and says, giving us the finger and F you, I'm out of here. Just says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. It's like, I will follow that. We can argue whether he's God, not God. I don't care. But that sentiment that he expressed right there, I
right.
know it's something that I aspire to because I don't know I could do it myself. And that's why when I say I follow Christ, Christ is I want to aspire to get to there. I might never get there, but it's like putting up a picture of Bruce Lee in a dojo or a bodybuilder in a gym. It's like, this is helping me get to where I want to be.
Hmm. And that's respectable. But when you say Jesus, not everybody believes what you just said. There's plenty of people that believe, well, Jesus also said this, and
Yeah.
at
No,
least
no,
was supposed to have said that, and so it's just uh, I respect where you're at with regard
yeah,
to your
yeah,
faith. I just was curious about how you square some of those circles, and
yeah.
I'm also curious, just from a human point of view, why we need to take those lessons and immediately inject those questions of uncertainty. And, well, what do you mean by that? Well, what do you mean by that? Well, what do you mean by that? Where in reality, what we're talking about is forgive them for they know not what they do. That's good enough.
Yeah.
I don't need to know where that came from or which version of Jesus said it, your version or the Catholic version or the Pentecostal version or the evangelical version or the, et cetera, et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera.
yeah.
It's just, maybe just a mental exercise on my part, but I totally respect it, Steve, and
No,
in you and the way you articulate it.
I appreciate that, Joe. I value these conversations. I'm looking forward to the day that we can do this face to face. I almost got there 2 years ago for the reunion concert. Almost was able to make it happen.
Oh, that would have been nice. Yeah, had all three of you all in one place.
Yeah, the
Well, we'll
three
keep our fingers
brothers.
crossed. Maybe it happens someday. Yeah. That
Yeah,
was the
well.
first time I actually met Matthew. So that was cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So are you going to be based in Washington for the foreseeable future, or is Nashville going to be
Yeah.
more? Yeah.
No, I've got all my kids here and I've got 10 grandkids here too. So this
Oh,
is
there you.
home.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
Pacific Northwest is a great place to suffer, through life. It's just beautiful here.
You know, Joe,
The Cascades and all the volcanoes and the Columbia Gorge and beautiful. The coastline.
when you find your
Ooh,
place, we'd been talking about leaving Hong Kong like 2 or 3 years ago, and we just really thought, why? We have such a great group of friends. All the kids are here. Um, Hong Kong just really takes care of us. I mentioned I go to the hospital like 2, 3 weeks ago. Joe, I got immediately taken in, triage. They gave me AKG. I got a CAT scan and I got blood work done. I got all that for 100 Hong Kong dollars, which is about 12 US dollars. I got a CAT scan, blood work, and EKG, doctor's consultation, if there was any, and they gave me medicine for the next 2 weeks until I got to my regular doctors who filled me up again for like the equivalent of 12 US dollars.
Ridiculous. We can't get there. For
Yeah.
some, we can't get there. It's socialism,
Yeah. I
the
always say Hong
boogeyman.
Kong, one of the most capitalist places in the world, and we have socialized medicine.
Yeah,
They
we
see it as
cannot
this
get
is
there.
just what you're supposed to have. Funny thing is, China doesn't have socialized medicine. The communist country doesn't have socialized medicine. The
Hmm.
capitalist enclave of Hong Kong has socialized medicine, but it's because of the British legacy.
Wild.
Anyhow,
Well, best to Tammy and your kids, and yeah, maybe we'll get to have an in person one of these days. Once I get my website finished and up and running, based on this record, I'll be getting back in touch with you.
please do. I'd love to do something and have it on your
Yeah,
website.
and I'll promote this, of course. Once you get it all edited and whatever you're
Yeah.
going to do with it.
What about you? Are you retired now? You cleaned out your office,
I'm
right? I
in my
remember
last
seeing.
semester.
Okay.
This is my last semester. So I'm officially retired January 1st, but our semester ends like December 12th. So that's it for
Okay.
me. And they freaked out when I told them I wanted to retire, but I'm coming back. I have to take 6 months off because that's the rules, and then they want me back to teach as an adjunct after that. So it's
Okay. I mean, it keeps
retirement, but
you, yeah. But do you ever
yeah, I
really
don't have
want
to
to
go to faculty
retire?
meetings.
Yeah.
I do. I'm 69, Steve, and the question you'll
Well,
know
that's
when it's
true.
time. How
Yeah.
much how do you want to spend your last years? And I mean, even if you go by the actuarial tables, I don't have much time left. But even in the best of worlds, maybe if I make it to mid 80s or so, that's still
Mhm.
only 15 years, and
Yeah.
that's a sobering idea.
Yeah. Oh,
Things that you want to
that's
do, and
any thoughts you want to share? You thinking of over the next 5, 10 years you'd like to do?
I've told my therapist that I see my mission as primarily taking care of myself,
Hmm.
body, mostly my health. Because it starts breaking down. You see this.
Yeah.
It's all downhill from here. It's never going to get any better.
Yeah.
It's only piling condition on condition on condition and following things up. And I've seen that. Oh, we'll have to follow this up. We'll have to do another blood test. Or it turned out this time we'll keep an eye on it. I never heard that when I was 20 or 30 or 40. Come on. So it's really about that and getting to the gym and spending time with my kids.
Hmm.
I have a great garden in my front yard. I have a small house with this relatively small, manageable yard. I want to bounce my grandkids on my knee, and if I have enough in me, make another record.
Yeah. Oh, good. That sounds very desirable and not far off from my ambitions as I get closer to that. And I've kind of made a birthday commitment to myself that, or birthday present to myself, 10 months. I want to lose about 15 pounds. And I'm not going to cut drinking totally, but I've got an app now. I'm really trying to, um, this health consultant that I was working with, he said, Steve, what's your biggest challenge to reaching your health goals? And I said, Hong Kong. And he goes, Hong Kong, what do you mean? He's in Wales in the
Mm,
UK. And I said, it's the city. It's the international. I said, there's not a day goes by that somebody's not messaging me. Hey, Steve, let's meet up for a beer. Hey, Steve, I'm in town. Let's go to have a beer. Let's go get a drink. I mean, literally, I could drink every single day.
mm,
And as I approach 60, my body cannot do that anymore.
yeah,
Um,
right.
so I've made certain commitments to and I have been slowly. I'm actually much better off than I would have been 4 or 5 years ago. But I'm thinking I'm ready to take it to the next level. I've started going to the gym much more frequently when I wasn't a gym person. When you're talking about the gym, um, and even my
I
mom, what's happened? I want to my wife saying, Steve, we want to get you, make sure when you're doing your exercises, you're doing floor exercises and you're getting up off the ground. And I'm thinking, I've
right.
reached that age where I got to make sure I can get up off the ground.
It's all mobility. All the longevity experts will tell you, even not even just the regular doctors. It's going to boil down to diet and exercise that'll keep you alive
Hmm.
and keep you from falling down and breaking a hip or whatever. But I mean, I was lucky. I played college and high school and college sports, so it's kind of always been in my DNA. And it's
Hmm.
getting to the gym is as a religious experience as brushing my teeth. I mean, religion in the terms of I do it, I have to do it. You know, it's like
Yeah.
brushing my teeth.
Yeah.
Not going to the gym. And I don't always just go to the gym. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, so I'm hiking as much as I can too.
Yeah.
And, I can do a 2,000 foot elevation and burn 1,100 calories in a day. And
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
good. And just have my perspective reset also while I'm doing
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah. We get the hiking out here too, because people, you watch a travel channel about Hong Kong and you think, oh, we're just this urban jungle. And 50% of it is country parks, beautiful little islands you can take a day trip out to and go hike. And you get the ocean, so I know what you mean about that. You get in that
yeah,
headspace when you're hiking
it's
and to
immediate.
me,
I get out of my
yeah,
car, 2 steps into the trail with the old growth all around me, and it's immediate.
yeah. And
Oh yeah,
don't you find that to be an almost spiritual experience?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've written about this on my blog where it,
Hmm.
it makes you feel very small and not in a bad way. You're up against the ages when you're looking at geological phenomenon, the Mount Hood and Mount Rainier and Mount
Yeah.
Adams having erupted 4 million years ago, and there's the wall of lava, and you can imagine what that must have looked like coming down the gorge, or the Missoula floods or the Columbia River. Yes, we are so small and temporal. We are really on the pale blue dot, and
Hmm.
it refocuses you. I think if you do it right, anyway.
I couldn't
If
agree
you're open
more.
to that,
I couldn't agree more. Hey, thanks so
yeah.
much for this conversation, man. It was
My
and
thanks in return. It's just
yeah,
really always enjoy it.
likewise. And congrats on the album. I genuinely liked it. It was
Oh,
really,
thanks.
really enjoyed it. And
I
I
appreciate your listening to it.
until next time, and happy Halloween. It's Halloween over here. I got a 14-year-old. We're gonna have to get him sorted. He's got a costume, and after Christmas, Halloween is his favorite holiday. So,
What's not
which
to like, right?
as good Christians, we're not supposed to like that, but
well, well,
I
fuck
think
that. Excuse me.
yeah. Have a good
All
evening
right,
over there,
dude.
Joe.
You too. Have a great one.
All
We'll
right.
see you.
Cheers, mate.